Hey everyone, George here and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm not going to be on camera. Today I'm going to have you focusing on the tank itself because I think it's important to the subject that we're going to be talking about today, which is scaping a discus tank properly. Now these are my rules that I live by. They are not necessarily rules that you have to live by, but I find the best results with discus come from the way that I have been scaping my tanks. Now this is not something that I knew just out of nowhere when I started collecting discus fish, but it was something that I learned over time. So this is really results oriented. This is something that I would tell you is tried and true with me because I have been dealing with this situation and figuring out the best way to scape a discus tank for a long time. But before we get too much into that, I want to talk about when you first start a discus tank and 2 points that you need to make sure that you take care of before anything else. Number one, my recommendation is when you start a discus tank, figure out how many discus can go in that tank as full adults, and buy all of your fish at the same time and at the same size. Now the reason for that is because number one, there's going to be a pecking order, and that's going to happen regardless of their size, but you have less chance of having a dominant bully fish that is going to cause a lot of disruption in your tank if you get them all at the same size. That pecking order will quickly resolve itself and you will not have as many problems as some people have. Piecemealing your discus tank is not something I recommend, but if you have to do that, I understand that. And if you find that you do have a bully in the tank, that you just can't stop that particular fish from picking on everybody in the tank and causing a lot of disruption, I recommend getting rid of that fish immediately and putting another fish in there as quickly as you possibly can so that you can get that process of the pecking order out of the way. So let's get back to talking about the tank itself and how I think it's important that you scape your tank. And I'm going to begin with the background. Number one, I like a black background or a clear glass background on both sides. The clear glass on both sides is actually probably the best situation you could have if you are to get your fish to, absolutely color up and not hide at all, because there's no place for them to hide. There basically is no area in which they can go behind in that black background and sort of fade into it. And you'll notice when you get discus fish, they will tend to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to do that all the time, but occasionally they will do that if they're just wanting some, time to themselves. Some of your discus fish will occasionally go to that area of the tank and go up against that darker background and sort of turn their brighter colors down a bit. Now, the reason why I choose a white sand bottom or a clear glass bottom is because the fish will color up a lot better when they are dealing with a bottom that is not dark, with dark rocks and heavily planted tanks, plus a dark background. If you have all of those elements in place, it's a recipe for disaster because your fish are going to camouflage all the time because that's what their instincts are to do. You may have a few that are light in color and they really can't get away. A good example of that would be if you're collecting red Marlboros or something like that, which are actually called melons, red melons now. If you have that particular situation, those fish can't change color on you enough to camouflage themselves. But any of your fish that are darker in color and can turn themselves darker at any time, those are the fish that you are looking to prevent from camouflaging because if they can, they will. And like I said, especially if there's stress in the tank, anxiety in the tank for the fish, if there's a dominant fish in the tank that is picking on them, they will tend to do that. But my recommendation is always either a cream colored sand, a white sand, or a clear bottom. Now, as far as the stone goes, I recommend a lighter colored stone as well, because this also gives you a canvas of lighter colors that are contrast for your fish up against that, and they will look good. Now, I've seen some people go with no plants whatsoever, and I've seen other people do a small amount of planting like I've done here, where I just have stuck some really hardy plants in the tank that can handle the temperatures that discus needs, such as Anubias, Java fern, and so forth. And those plants seem to do really well, and you don't need a ton of them. You just want some in there to give it a little bit of life, and a nice big piece of wood also around it, so that your fish look like they're in a more natural state. Now, you can have no plants whatsoever. Now, the problem with that is that plants eat organics, and organics are what build up into your tank, and other nitrites and any other types of organics that build up in your tank are going to be absorbed into your plants as food. And believe it or not, I don't even, if you look at this particular tank right here, I don't even dose my plants anymore with fertilizer, because there are enough organics in the water to keep these plants in very good shape and to keep them very green and lush. And I just don't even bother dosing the tank anymore. So the important thing that I'm trying to get across here is that when you're putting a tank together like this, think of the size of your tank and plot it out as best you can. Like I said, white sand bottom or clear bottom, or the lightest color sand that you can find is always going to be best. Light rock, again, sort of an island formation if you can, because what this is going to do is give your fish a lot of room to swim around in the tank and to grow. Now, there are questions as to whether or not fish such as discus grow bigger and better in smaller tanks and then move them to a larger tank later on. And I don't know what the answer is to that 100%, but I would tell you this, that if you're thinking about doing something like that, really make sure that you're reading up on it and you understand what they mean by that. And I'll put a link down below of an article that does talk about this very thing. So when we're looking at this particular tank right here, I think this is the ideal setup. And as you can see, each one of these fish, with the exception of a couple of the darker ones in the back here, are pretty much showing all of their color and are looking the way I want them to look. Now, as I'm feeding, those ones in the back will come out for different times of the day. If they're hungry and they want food, they'll come out and they will light up beautifully and school or shoal, I should say, with the other fish in the tank. And it's a really nice opportunity for you to see the beauty of these fish. Like I said, if you're putting too much of a heavily planted tank in there with dark substrate, dark stone, lots of dark wood, a dark background, you're just asking for problems with those fish not being able to live in that environment. And long term, that can be a lot of stress on the fish and reduce their life expectancy as well. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope I helped you a little bit here with figuring out how to put a discus tank together. Please give me a like on this, subscribe, leave your comments down below if you have anything to add to this. I appreciate it. And again, share with your friends. We will see you on the next one. Until then, try this out and see how it does for you.